Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to a latest case study here to Sharam Dad Limited. I have with me the wonderful Parvez Sheikh Taj. MashaAllah. Welcome. Thank you very much for agreeing to come to this interview, Parvez. Watching you, I remember the first time I met you, I remarked on your very handsome mustache. It struck me the first time I met you, and yeah, it's still there. It's great to see that. MashaAllah, MashaAllah. So, yeah, please introduce yourself. Tell us what you do in terms of your job, your kind of life circumstance and how you stumbled upon my work and getting into conversation to start working with me in the first place.
Yeah, sure. Walaikum salam, first of all. So yeah, thank you for uh, working with me in the last few months. It's been great. So I'm a clinical data scientist. I work in the pharmaceutical industry, and I live in the Southeast, family with kids. And I first came across your work through one of the LinkedIn posts that Tanim Zaman had mentioned you as one of the world-class coaches. And I thought, I've never heard of you. I've heard of other coaches, but not yourself. So I sort of started following some of your works on LinkedIn posts and stuff like that. And then I think uh, Q4 of last year, I sort of may have made an initial kind of contact with you, and then things were happening, which meant I couldn't maintain that contact with you. And then earlier this year, in January, we touched base and we had that sort of initial conversation. And um, it was really good because, you took the time to understand exactly where I'm at, where I want to get to, and how you can also help me get there. Some of the tools that you have to help me expedite the process, which I found to be very valuable and useful. And Jazakallah khair for that, because you certainly have helped me, to become more in tune with my role as a Muslim and, my role within family and etc. So yeah,
Let's talk
Alhamdulillah.
about that. So let's talk about like this is interesting. I think there's been an evolution from what and this is a journey for most clients. There's an evolution from what you say you want and need at the beginning to then having more clarity on what's actually most important and then moving on that trajectory. So when you initially came, can you remember what were the kind of some of the problems, some of the frustrations, some of the anxiety in life you had, which led you? Because I believe it was sometimes people go towards coaching because they want to achieve more. But sometimes they're driven by the pay, like the kind of the carrot and the prize of achieving more. But sometimes they're driven by the pain of the frustration of where they're at and not meeting their potential. Where would you say you were? Was it more of a pull, kind of like wanting to achieve more? Or was it more of a pain and frustration with where you were at when we first had that strategy session and you decided to embark on this journey?
Yeah, I think it was a combination of both. The pain was coming from the fact that I wanted to be somewhere and I wasn't getting there, and that was creating the pain, as opposed to trying to get away from something. So the pain was definitely I see that gap, and because there's that gap, I'm trying to hit the level that I want to get to, and I'm not getting it there at the rate. Or so yeah, that created the pain, and that kind of pushed me more to sort of work with you.
And do you mind
And
elaborating on that? What were some of the pain points? What were some of the frustrations you
yeah,
had in different areas of your life? And it'll be interesting for the listener to see if they have similar ones.
absolutely. So I think there was a lot of there's a lot of things to juggle in life, career, especially if you're in a sort of demanding kind of um, role in your career, plus family life, plus obligations to, wider family. And, also need time for yourself to rest and recharge. And so all of these things, I used to feel that the day is just getting away from me despite the best of intentions. And, I'd start the day well, feeling grounded, but as the day went on, it kind of slipped away. So I think one of the tools that I mean, I had heard of it before, but not to the level that you sort of helped me get to the depths of it, which is time tahara, um, and tracking the time. And, you've got these really good tools, which is to see where you're spending your daily hours and minutes. And then at the end of the day or end of the week, you really get a good understanding. And I actually realized that some of the time that I was using, I wasn't even realizing that, my time was going on something different. And I've become much more mindful of having those deep work block sessions,
Nice.
to the point where even my shallow work sessions have become much more deep work based.
Yeah. You've
Um,
allocated a time, you've batched it, and so
yeah,
it's happening all of the
yeah,
time rather than just,
yeah.
doing it all the time throughout each day. Yeah.
Yeah, and the Mabruk moments really help because if you set your three hits in the morning, which you sort of go into in your program, the three key items that we're going to be going through that day or that week, and how that correlates with your Mabruk moments, and having that leverage ladder. The leverage ladder was just really amazing because it helped me to understand, um, where I need to improve in terms of my qadars for the salars and, making those up. But at the same time, having those other bigger goals, as a Muslim, increasing my knowledge, using the Q2 planner, to help you sort of. So I'm mentioning these tools because these are the tools that I've used and others have used from what I've sort of seen to reduce that gap between where I want to be and where I am and how do I get there. And I've realized that despite the best will in the world, you're not going to get there unless you have certain practices, certain
Yes.
systems and framework in place. And that's what the Vista program does very, very well.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that because I think that's a good example. Like the you mentioned, like depth to Allah, qadar salah, and knowledge. Like those are probably things which were probably in your awareness for years, right? But how would you? One of one of my claims, which maybe you've experienced, hopefully, is that you'll make more progress in weeks than you've done in years by yourself. Would you
Yeah,
say, in terms of Islamic knowledge and in terms of qadar salah, accumulating, getting through the debt, and in terms of the levels of your Deen practice. Would you say that's true for you that you've achieved in weeks, which has which maybe in years you've struggled to make that type of rate of
100%.
Islamic knowledge, etc.
100%. Because now instead of looking at certain lectures by certain ulemas on YouTube, I'm going for a structured course
Mm,
which helps you gain momentum in your knowledge and you know when I mean it's not you're not going for a degree certification or something, but if you look at sort of degrees and courses, it's always structured and you build up on the knowledge. And that's what exactly you've helped me understand the value of going through a structured course as opposed to randomly watching a YouTube
yeah,
video on an area that I want to learn in. I mean, which is great. There's no, there's value in that, of course. But when it's structured, it's more methodical, it's more sustainable, and it's momentum driven as well. And I think that has a bigger impact on you as an individual
mm.
than watching a 20-minute video lecture.
And we try to apply that to marriage and everything as well. If you came to, or when we discuss marriage, as other clients have, we follow that same professional kind of system that, okay, maybe there's going to be a book I might recommend or, a
Mm.
course which I might be aware of. And that will be part of the leverage adder, that there's this knowledge component as well as the execution component. And most of us, we're used to doing that in our professions. But one of the things which we try to do in Vista is like, okay, let's have that same energy, that same professionalism, and apply that to other areas of life, and we'll find similar success as we've achieved in our careers, right? So fantastic. I love that. One other question I wanted to ask you, in terms of like when you first came to me, you had this strong desire, if I remember correctly, like the freedom lifestyle, that you wanted to kind of meet your potential there, set up your business or get passive income, and that's a very, very common it's a very common goal, right? But what sometimes we have to have that difficult conversation, which is like, okay, I get this. This is great, but I remember talking to you in the strategy call, and subsequently, it's like, okay, we need to connect that to a greater purpose, and we need to kind of realize that that's not the end of itself. That's a beautiful kind of benefit on the way. But we have that there are priorities, right? And with yourself, it was a Deen, and then it was like getting some productivity systems and laying some foundations. And now you've started your leverage adder, on e-commerce finally. But I've had to kind of hold you back and delay
Yeah.
that. This is something which is brilliant that you've gone through that. But I remember when you first came to me, you're probably hoping and wanting to start with the business and start working on that initially. Could you describe, especially because there's going to be many people watching this and they're ready, they want to set up their business, they want to kind of, and what's different to me compared to a business coach, I have a lot of people who I do coach in business. I help them set up their business, I help them double their income in business, etc. But we normally don't start there. What I call balanced business coaching. We start with Vista, we start with the Vista systems, we often start with Deen, and then now, having you been through that journey, what would you say to someone who's in your situation? Well, maybe talk just about your situation, how you went from really wanting to kind of focus on e-commerce right at the beginning, And you don't even mention it to me. You've been quite good at the early stages. You ask, "Oh, when can I do it? How can I do it at the same time?" And you've had to wait, and I think you've got past that phase where you're constantly yearning to do it, and now finally you are working on it. How can you describe that process and how it felt emotionally, having to almost let go a little bit on that dream in the short term in order to do some of the other areas of your life, and set these foundations first?
Yeah, sure. So honestly, there are two things to it. First of all, how did I feel? Frustrated because you weren't letting me go on to that stage of working on the e-commerce. So I felt kind
Was
of,
it?
I didn't really voice it to you, but I did feel frustrated that we weren't working on that because I thought I was joining your program to focus on that. And that takes me on to the second point, which is trust the process. Because by going through the process with you, and I was actually quite patient, I thought, I'm going to trust Tushar because, I've had somebody like Tanim Zaman rate him very highly. There must be a reason. Let's just trust the process and see what happens. So I trusted the process and I really engaged with working on the mission statement.
Mm.
And that was a lot of hard work, because I had to tap deep into myself, into my inner core to really understand. I mean, we all know what, our mission in life is to worship Allah, to look after
Yeah.
family, be dutiful to parents, and be a good citizen of the world and aim for Jannah, Jannatul Firdaus, inshallah. Um, However, just getting that sort of deep clarity on the mission statement took some time. So I thought I was at that time, I remember thinking, this isn't helping me achieve my e-commerce goals, in addition to my career as a clinical data scientist. But then I thought, let's carry on. And I carried on. And I, went through those few weeks and months of the Vista program, focusing on my Islamic knowledge audit and Qada Salahs. And now, sort of looking back, I realized the value of going through that process with you, which was focus on something that's definitely much more important, which is our connection with Allah and developing that knowledge base. But it's more than that. It's more to do with developing those small daily habits
Yeah.
that it becomes almost like ingrained so that you no longer have to work for it. It becomes like second nature. And now that's sort of more sort of second nature to me. I feel that having gone through that process, for me to implement the success tracker on e-commerce, for me to implement the leverage ladder on e-commerce, I'm much more better equipped and feel more confident applying it to that than I would have done, say, 4 or 5 months ago. I would have perhaps felt a bit more overwhelmed because I've been through the process once and it was something relatively speaking easy, not less important, crucial in terms of our iman and ibadah. That's
Mm.
the number one priority. But easy in the sense that you know how many qadars you're going to go through, how many courses you're going to go through, or what modules you're going to go through. And I think so. In totality, I think it's about trusting the process and having a little bit of patience to say, let's go through what, as a coach, Brother Tushar is saying. He knows what my sort of end goal is for working with him. And I know you've mentioned it throughout my sort of last few months of working together, and I think it's been really good, really beneficial going through that strategy rather than launching deep into the e-commerce side of things or whatever the business might have been for somebody else. I think it's just familiarization. So you always mentioned standardization and optimization. I think that's what you were trying to do for me to standardize and then optimize. And I won't go
And
into the
prioritize,
details.
putting
Yeah,
Allah first,
prioritize.
and yeah, 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 fantastic. And it's like you'll never regret, because one of the things is like having that focus, that the leverage that we only let you do one at a time initially, right? And it's like, if we're going to pick one, right, this is like our laser, this is our super weapon, and we need to direct it to the area of life which is going to be the most impactful. And I'd ask you, I say, look, if you were to pass away, God protect us all, and we're to meet Allah on the day of Judgment. I remember, Dhul Hijjah, Ramadan, when you came in, Ramadan, Dhul Hijjah both came in our period, right? So that was naturally a period of great reflection anyway. And so, like, okay, look, end of Ramadan, what would you have rather had your leverage at, right? If Allah's going to ask you, are you going to put it
Mm.
on your business? And I always give you the choice, right? To be fair to myself, right? I'm not forcing you to do anything. It's like, okay, do you want to do the leverage on the e-commerce, or do you think that you're going to be questioned upon, about your deen, which is going to be the highest priority? And you said without hesitation, it's got to be the deen, right? And so that's the ultimate truth, is when we ask ourselves, what am I accountable to Allah first, right?
Mm.
And ultimately, and this is important for anyone listening, it's like the dream lifestyle, the freedom. Sometimes the problem is that we get this sold a lot. It is a bit of a Western dream, to be honest, right? This kind of whole freedom lifestyle, and that's where the whole concept, the language, it's not from our tradition, right? It's not, and I'm not saying it's wrong, but what I'm saying is it has to have its place. Sometimes you don't hear the people who are pushing freedom lifestyle talk about akhirah. You don't hear them talk about duty to God, right? They're focused on this world, and it's a lovely dream. The beauty, what we want as Muslims is a hayat and tayyiba, right? The goodly life, which
Mm,
is that you put Allah first, you make worship of Him your priority, and as part of that, part of your vision for that is that I'm going to take care of my obligations to Allah, but as part of my obligations to my family and myself, I want to have professional excellence because the sunnah is to have dazzling excellence in everything, right? And there's absolutely nothing stopping me following the footsteps of Abu Bakr and Abdul Rahman ibn Auf and some of the great wealthy Sahaba. And I remember talking about that with yourself in terms of your vision and your mission statement. That was part of the vision was like these wealthy Sahabas. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. But all of them were very, very strong on their personal worship. They were
mm,
not doing any haram. They were not missing their obligations. The problem is with many people out there, many Muslims, they're going for the freedom lifestyle, right? And they're looking at that aspect of the Sahaba, but they're forgetting that, well, look, before that, before anything else, they were very solid on the Fard al-Ain and the fundamentals of the Deen. What we do in Vista, which is unlike any other program, we will ensure and encourage and give you the tools to prioritize those Fard al-Ain, the duty to Allah first, and then give you the skills to equip. Okay, now let's expand that, and you can keep that up and do both, and also do really well in your business, etc. Right? So it's great that you've been on that journey, mashallah. Fantastic, fantastic. Um, just a penultimate question before we finish off is someone might, coaching is something that's not that common in the Muslim community. It is very common in the corporate space, in sport, and so many people are skeptical and think, well, why couldn't you have just done that yourself, or why couldn't you just read a book or a YouTube video or something like that? Why go on such a, such an expensive coaching program, right? So, you've been through it, and you now know the difference between try to do something yourself and the difference between that and a course, which is second, like a self-study course, and thirdly, which is a kind of very intimate, very intensive coaching program. What would you say to someone, and maybe you've already had family and friends ask you, someone wondering, well, why coaching? Why not just learn it yourself, or read a book, or watch YouTube videos, or go on even a course, right? And I always say it's not just a course. This is a
yeah.
coaching program. What would you say to them to explain now that you've been through it? Why do you, and we're looking at inshallah working together even longer term. What would you say is the reason, the benefit, and the difference between coaching and other forms of self-development?
A huge difference, major difference, both in terms of the progress that you make, the rate at which you make those progress, and what you actually achieve. Um, so I've read lots of self-development books. I've done self-taught courses, but I mean, I've had coaches before you as well, but you've been a fantastic coach for me. And working with you has, shown that and it's just not a one-off. So I'm not speaking from one-off experience of working with a coach. The coaches I've worked with over the years, um, whatever the purpose was, working with a coach really enhances the clarity and execution of what's needed to achieve the goal that you're aiming to achieve.
Mm.
Now, I know within our community, it's like, you know, why do you need to do that? You've been through university, you're an educated person, waste of money, pay off pay this off, pay that off instead, whatever, or save it for a rainy day. Absolutely true. But I learned some years ago one of Warren Buffett's philosophy, which is look at the value, not the cost.
Nice.
And the value is what value are you going to get from doing a course with Tushar over the cost of working with Tushar? And for me personally, it has been far more insights, far more skill set, far more tools I've got access to now than I did a few months ago. And I know that those tools, the knowledge base, just the knowledge and the tools that I've got now will expedite the goals that I'm setting myself for the next 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, inshallah. The results are in the hands of Allah. I can only do what I can, and working with a coach is me personally speaking, and it's everyone needs a coach, everyone needs a guide. The Sahabas had a guide who was the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and they were the best of ummah. And the Prophet was, he had a guide himself. Whether it's how to do wudu was taught by Jibril alayhi salam. So there's always a need for someone to learn something from somebody else, and it's about finding the right person that can get you to where you want to be. Now, it may be that somebody is happy where they are. They don't need any goals because they don't have any dreams, and they're happy to be doing what they're doing. And everyone's different. But if somebody does have big dreams, if they do want to achieve things in life, if they are in pain for whatever the pain may be, whether it's career, health, finance, marriage, relationships, whatever they may be, in my experience, a coach is always a great avenue to help alleviate those pains and achieve what you want to achieve. And it does require work. It's not about, dumping it onto the coach's shoulder and letting the coach do everything. It does require me doing the work. You can only show me the tools. It's up to me to apply it. You can only guide me, and it's up to me to take those steps. So there is a lot of work in Vista, but the work that I had to put in has long range, long-term benefits, inshallah.
Fantastic. And can we finish? That's so eloquently put. Thank you so much. Can we finish on three? Could you say like three of your proudest achievements on whether even if it's identity-based habits or actual outcomes? What would you say three of your biggest outcomes, your most proudest or most impactful outcomes or achievements have been on the program so far?
I'd say I'm now more of a goal achiever. I'm not the finished product, but I'm far more of a goal achiever now than I was before.
Nice.
And by the way, I'll come back to one of the reasons why in a moment. The other one is celebrating my Mabruk moments much more, because I think as Muslims we don't tend to celebrate much, and now I'm sort of more comfortable celebrating those Mabruk
Fantastic.
moments. Um, and the third one I'd say is a system of structure now, to go through day, week, month, in line with how much effort I put into the documents that I use, whether it's the habit tracker, whether it's the Q2 planner, whether it's the success tracker. So these help me sort of navigate through different areas of life. And just to come back to number one, so it wasn't a big part of your Vista program, but you recommended Mohsin from Leicester, the Mohsin.
Oh yeah. Okay. All right. Okay.
So I actually sort of, went on ahead and looked into it, and then he's got this Shilajit resin stuff, and he's got these other stuff. And I looked into them, so and so I started implementing some of the recommendations you made, and it does make a big difference. So it's like the little nuggets of information I can take, anyone can take, and sort of optimize and what's the word I'm looking for? Gain exponential results in a very
Yeah,
short period of time.
so you've just reminded me of a question I forgot to ask you because part of the reason why you're able to get these nuggets, as you say, is that you're on a longer term program. You didn't just do the 2 month Vista Accelerator, you've done the full silver, and that's enabled you to also join HPX. So you've been coming to several sessions and different areas of not just Vista, vision, ihsan, time mastery, attitude, strength and stamina, but also the high performance. And so you're right. What part of the benefits of having coach is, and I'm the same. I've been on some programs where, admittedly, for example, it's been like a Facebook marketing program, and my Facebook account was closed, and so I didn't actually get the main outcome which I intended. But the coach, the director of the company, she was such a inspiring person, and her book recommendation changed my life. Right, just her book
Mm,
recommendation, and then I can say the same on nearly every coach I've had. I've learned something, either a book or something they recommend. Their
yeah.
personal, the Oura ring, we'll talk about that. That was from one of my coaches. So you're right. Like when you're in that environment and you're with other high performers, that enables you to kind of get these benefits you didn't even intend, right? And it's being in that environment of high performance. And I wanted, yeah, this is for existing clients as well. This question. which is like, what would you say is the benefit of? Imagine if you just did 2 months of this, and I'm sure you've got a lot of benefit in 2 months, but you've been on a 6 month trajectory, and that's enabled you to also do HPX.
Mhm.
How much more enriching is it being in a longer term process with the coach as opposed to kind of 2 month intense? Yes, you get loads of benefit, and maybe it's accelerated benefit in a way, but what would you say to someone considering doing something a bit longer, 6 months or 12 months, compared to a short term process?
Uh, I would say the word immersion. So
Mm,
immersion in the sense that you're immersing yourself into that environment. Um, and the fact that you hold these very regular coaching calls, group calls with your clients makes it all the more enriching to not only sort of get to where you want to be, uh, but how to get there. Also, connecting with other people. You're sort of creating positive energy around yourself to stay on track. And I think those weekly touch points that we have, what's your plan for the week, and have you achieved those that you set earlier in the week? That really does help get the attraction on people. It doesn't mean I was always hitting my targets for the week, because there are days and weeks when I sort of did fall short, and I'm the first to admit. And
yeah,
you know,
we're all human. Yeah, it happens. Yeah,
but the whole point is it gives you the insights to realize, where do I need to make those tweaks to move forward. And I would sort of encourage anyone who wants to make real sort of progress and substantial progress, both in terms of speed and result, to certainly consider working with you, because the tools that you have shared have been, mashallah, very, very impressive. And barakallahu feek, may Allah reward you for that.
yeah, okay.
And may Allah reward you with abundance and success in both dunya
Yeah,
and
you too.
akhirah.
You've been
I
a
mean, that's
wonderful
my dua
client,
for you.
and
It's been a pleasure working with you. Jazakallah khair.
thank you so much for your time. Jazakallah khairan. Assalamu alaikum.